You are trespassing on private property. I'm calling the sheriff right now.
Ma'am, I am the state attorney's investigator. I'm serving this subpoena.
At 4:27 a.m. on May 3, 2024, my doorbell exploded like it was on fire, and blue lights washed over my front windows. Cold air slid under the door. I smelled wet asphalt and burned coffee from some poor officer's cup as I cracked the door open in my socks. Two cops stood there, hands hovering near their belts, asking if I was trespassing in my own driveway. My driveway. The one that curves up to my house like a fancy ribbon. One of them said, "Sir, we got a call that you threatened a resident and refused to leave private property." I just blinked at him and pointed behind me at my family photos on the wall like, do I look like I'm squatting in my own home? It started over something so dumb it still makes my jaw clench. A week earlier, Karen from 3 doors down strutted over while I was backing my SUV in and said my tires crossed an invisible line on the edge of her precious driveway. She had a tape measure. I wish I was joking. She leaned in, smiling like she caught a criminal, and said the HOA will handle you. I tried to laugh it off, but she kept going, loud enough for the birds to hear. That's when this turned into Karen doxed my mansion address after a driveway dispute. Had no idea I am their state attorney, because the next day my home address was posted in a neighborhood Facebook group with a pin on a map and a caption that said this bully needs to be taught a lesson. I did what any normal person does before they turn into a full-time detective in their own life. I called the HOA office at 9 a.m., calm voice, polite words, asking them to remove the post and stop the harassment. The manager whispered like I was calling from a war zone and said, "We can't control what residents post." Then I emailed the board. No answer. I walked to the next door neighbor, hoping someone would say, "Hey, Karen went too far." Instead, he stared at his shoes and said, "She's on the architectural committee. People don't cross her." Even the lady who always waters her roses looked like she wanted to help, but she just shook her head and went inside. It felt like living in a nice neighborhood with a giant invisible muzzle on everyone. After the police left that morning, I sat at my kitchen island with my hands shaking, staring at my phone. The comments under Karen's post were getting worse. Someone wrote, "Let's show up and honk at midnight." Another one said, "Maybe the cops should check his house." My kid asked why the lights were flashing outside, and my throat went tight. That was my line in the sand. I wasn't going to scream, or threaten, or do anything stupid. I promised myself I would use proper channels only, because that's literally my job. I lined up photos, emails, and call logs in a binder. Then I started building a clean trail, screenshots with timestamps, the HOA email thread, the police case number, even the weird anonymous complaints that suddenly showed up about my trash cans. I also did the part Karen never expects, paperwork. I filed a public records request for HOA communications related to me, my address, and the so-called driveway violation. When the envelope finally arrived, the file landed with 63 pages. Emails, text chains, board notes. And right there, plain as day, was Karen telling the HOA manager to let it stay up because he deserves to sweat. There was also a message where she bragged she called the non-emergency line twice and they still didn't scare me enough, so she would try again. I wrote it all down in one simple order so a judge, a cop, or a bored teenager could follow it. Timeline Item 1 April 5th at 4:27 a.m. False trespass call. Timeline Item 2 April 12th at 6:18 p.m. Doxxing post with my address. Timeline item 3 April 15th at 7:02 a.m. Second false report about threats. It was a pattern, not a mistake, and patterns of false reports can be prosecuted. The twist didn't happen in some dark alley. It happened in the HOA clubhouse, under buzzing fluorescent lights, with stale cookie smell and a folding table full of petty power. Karen arrived in a blazer like she was going to court, waving printed screenshots of my tire marks like she discovered evidence of a crime. She stood up during open comments and said I intimidate residents and I bring danger into the neighborhood. Then she looked straight at me and smirked. Big mistake. I stood up, kept my voice flat, and said I'm here for one thing, to stop the harassment and fix the abuse of HOA power. I held up my binder and asked the board to confirm the doxing post came from a board member. Karen scoffed and said, "Prove it." So I did. I projected her own message on the screen, with her name and date, and the room went dead quiet for 1 second before phones popped up like fireworks. You could hear the tiny gasp ripple through the crowd. Someone whispered, "That's her." Another person laughed, the kind of laugh you do when you can't believe someone is that bold and that dumb. The board president's face turned the color of drywall. Karen tried to talk over me, but the room had already turned on her. People started reading the comments out loud from the screen. He deserves to sweat. Try again. Teach him a lesson. One teenager in the back said, "Lady, that's swatting vibes," and everyone cracked up. Then I dropped the last part, still calm, still lawful. I told them my name and my role, and I said, I am the state attorney for this circuit, but I'm recusing myself because this involves my home. I already referred the file to a neighboring office and included the police reports, the HOA records, and the doxing evidence. The city inspector was there too, because Karen had been using HOA threats to block other people's repairs while she built an unpermitted patio. The inspector handed her a notice, right in front of everyone, for an inspection and fines that could hit 5 figures. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. By the next morning, her post was gone, the HOA issued an apology email, and the board scheduled a vote to remove her from every committee. I heard she racked up 7 separate complaints against me in 40 days, and every single one had her fingerprints on it. The police didn't arrest her on the spot, because real life isn't a movie, but they did take a statement, and she got warned in writing about making false reports. The neighboring prosecutor's office filed the paperwork they needed, and a judge signed a no-contact order that kept her far away from my house and my family. The best part wasn't revenge. It was the quiet. 2 weeks later, a neighbor walked over with a plate of warm cookies and said, "I'm sorry we were scared. We shouldn't have been." We sat on my front steps in the evening breeze, and for the first time in months, the neighborhood felt like a neighborhood again. Please follow for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserves? Comment below.